I was just watching a lefty breakdown of the election, and they were going through all these different iterations of different leftist ideas and why Kamala didn't work or Kamala didn't work. And one is that they opine that the kids are not all right is one narrative. It's not so much that the young men are being radicalized, is that parents are seeing their young men just being consumed by video games and porn and just not getting ahead because they have no path forward. And I think that I do think that there's a large referendum, not for Trump per se, but what are we going to do with these young men? And the media apparatus that has been vilifying young men, the educational apparatuses that have been vilifying and shoving out young men, they're just not tenable anymore. People are totally fed up with paying for them. And so the political will to dismantle the Department of Education, that would be a godsend for a lot of people, might not go all the way through because of that bureaucracy. But I think that there is enough people, even of the leftist persuasion, that do want better for young men and understand that, okay, we're not so much we speak about being worried about them going and shooting up schools, but what we're actually worried about is them eating themselves alive with hedonism. So there's got to be somewhere between that. And I think entrepreneurialism, I think that something about the spirit of the PayPal mafia, something about the spirit of Elon Musk sending this rocket up into the sky and catching it on a fork the size of the Empire State Building, that is something that is so electric. It's like, this is the American dream. We can get together for that. And I do think, just symbolically or aesthetically, that there was something about Biden's concession speech yesterday that he just gave allowance to. This is a good thing. What's happening is the mandate of heaven. I've done everything that I could to stop this guy. I was told to do this thing. They probably drugged my soup this whole time. But God bless you. Go forth. Make America great again. I think that his smile really just did say, let's make America great. So whatever's going to happen, it might not be sweeping like deconstruction of the bureaucratic apparatus, but there might be an opening of the paths that are here now for young men, and then an opening through the dismantling of regulation for young men to do what they do best, which is go out on that Western boundary and do projects and explore and conquer in some way.
Well, I think the young man issue, I mean, I know that a lot of people in the media are saying, like, who cares? What about young women? But like, there is a problem with young women as well. That is true. I think because the ubiquity of female issues tends to not get framed in the same way as, like, what's the problem with young men and, like, all the think pieces that come out of it. Yeah. But I think that aesthetically, though, there was such a stark contrast between Kamala Harris and Trump. Like, you know, Kamala has, like, you know, Cardi B and Hollywoodism and very gauche celebrations of diversity, whereas Trump appealed to a lot, like, the revival of, like, chud culture that we saw. Like, if you're a core millennial or if you're a Gen Xer, the chud culture that was around, like, the early 2000s was everywhere. It was MTV, it was nu metal, it was, you know, the ruthless aggression WWE era, it was Woodstock 99, like, it was everything, right? Yeah. And so I think Trump is tapping into that vein. If you're an older Gen Xer, you remember Hulkamania, you remember tuning in to WCW and watching, you know, the NWO. And if you're a millennial, like, you know, you remember hearing Face the Pain by STEM before every UFC event. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you remember watching The Ultimate Fighter. And so, but now Dana White is there right next to Trump. And so I think that Trump explicitly appealed, and, you know, bro podcasters like Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan. And I truly think if Kamala did go with Joe Rogan, that would have changed things. But I think Kamala, there's a lot of people that were coping that she ran a good campaign. That's ridiculous. No. She was thrusted in there, and the sort of media apparatus and celebrity factor really did not appeal to people the way that they thought it was going to appeal. And it seems that there's one, speaking of anons that are brilliant, my good mutual Contrary Pancake, he said this the other day about Obama and the 2010s are gone. And a lot of that sort of like millennial coded cultural cachet that comes from the 2010s, corporate Memphis, corporate white wall minimalism, clap stomp hey, indie, R&B, Obama America, celebration of diversity, MLK, like how do I describe the Obama aesthetic? It's like business. I said in my book, I called it business casual hip hop, right? I thought that was brilliant. But Midwestern emo is a much older bander. So but the point being is that 2010s culture war aesthetic, that sort of triumphalism of a very specific class and very specific demographics, Trump basically erased that. We're in a new Chuddian era. And,
what's the dimensions of a Chud?
Zoomers are listening to Breaking Benjamin and Limp Bizkit again. This is amazing.
Okay.
This is something, right? And so I think that Trump is
this kind of like, what's Chud? Chud's kind of frat, but internet frat? Like, what is it?
Chud's like, it's a derogatory term for like...
Yeah, I know it's a derogatory, but what do you mean by it? What's your content? You're giving it a positive content.
Like basic, like sensitive young man, but also like, I guess you could say middle America, heartland, like explicit cultural... Like, how do I describe Chud? I mean, my chat will do it for me, but like... Yeah, it's more the lumpen proletariat gloff. It's like Chud is like very primal feeling, in your face culture. It's blue collar affectation type of stuff. Like the Chud Jack is the perfect meme for this. Like the sort of online doomer, troll personality. But the point being is that like Trump is someone said in the chat, is a new gloff, ICP is kind of Chud. What's funny is that ICP is more Hicklin. Insane Clown, like Juggalos are kind of Hicklin. What's funny is that ICP is, we'll get into that another time. But aesthetically though, like think of it, Trump is the like gaudy 80s synthwave, golden columns kitsch, Gordon Gekko, Greed is Good, pop celebrity, vaporwave, like he is that, right?
I can see
Trump
that.
Is
yeah,
like
I can see
opulence of wealth. He's a very specific part of Americana, right? But his fan base, his fandom, and Trump does have a fandom, is like the Chud, UFC, pro wrestling, metal, like bro podcaster, Sigma grind set, cryptocurrency. Like there's this mishmash of aesthetic signifiers that for some reason comes together under Trump, even though they're contradictory.
He's the
like
Chud
the fact
father.
That he could go to like Heartland America. And what'd you say?
He's the Chud father.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Trump is 88. His audience is the 1990s. Yeah, that's very good, Miami Virtue. Where is it? Yeah, but for some reason, the complex and oftentimes contradictory aesthetic nature of Trump is very interesting. Like, it's like, barstool conservatism.
Well, Trump hasn't abandoned his frame of what he is. Right, since he's come down that elevator, he has always been Donald Trump, real estate, multi-billionaire who has, created successful companies, properties, golf resorts, all the rest. Even when he did the McDonald's thing, the truck driving stuff, visiting the farmers, he has always been in his power suit, his big red tie, and everything else that goes with his aesthetic. He's never had to pander in a way or condescend himself because it's inauthentic.
No, you're right.
He never had to hire a consultant like Mitt Romney to pay $40,000 to find out which pair of mom jeans he looks good in to relate to the working class. It was inauthentic and no one believed it. He is unapologetically himself. And as what Ben was saying, I think that you have this degree that guys want to build shit. They want to be creative. Yeah. They want to do these things. Yeah. Whereas and that's the thing, I think someone had said this, and again, it goes back to all these lovely anonymous people that we owe so much credit to, that said really what changed with this election was that Trump was cool. Unlike in 2020 or 2016, he was cool, and I mean, surviving the assassination attempt, all the things that he's done, the guy's just, for the average person, guy's kind of a badass. And to now
that
be on the
McDonald's,
side
you
of,
cannot fake what he did at McDonald's.
No,
it
you
was a
can't.
total
Yeah.
stunt, but it had so much content inside of it. It had so much soul. It was like,
Yeah.
and I love it that he's always selling these stupid ass NFTs. It's like, why are you doing that? But that's who you are. It's like who you are, you know? It's odd.
Like
And
that
so
one,
you've got this
the Indian
so
guy
to-
at McDonald's. He's like, I pray for you, Trump. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's like, yeah. But yeah, go ahead, pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, like what we kind of witnessed is this large preference cascade where anyone who voted for him was just, either you were a diehard supporter or you were more or less saying, what's the word I'm looking for? Just this large, a preference cascade where people had said, you know what, the track we're on sucks. This guy is actually pretty cool, and I think Musk buying Twitter has a large role to play in that for the media ecosystem because you could see who he was, and the podcasting strategy was great. Him talking about addiction and the loss of his brother on Theo Vaughn, you aren't going to get that from any other politician, and you're not going to get that from anyone in Washington. And so people kind of like looked around and said, that guy's cool. The people that are with him actually want to build stuff, and that's the place that I want to go. Because you see this now all over, where people are in restaurants or the Madison Square Garden rally, where people are wearing their Make America Great Again hats or openly saying they voted for Trump in a way that I know for sure that would have gotten me in a lot of trouble, if not fired in 2020, that now it's totally acceptable, or more or less acceptable in quite a few places. And I think that has a lot to show for where things are going. I think that, and it's hard for me to put myself in the left shoes just to see all these cancellation of subscriptions and the rest of them. But it goes back to that question of like, well, what does a progressive or a wokey or whatever you want to call them, what do they have to offer to young men and young white men in particular? Well, not really anything, because I look at Vaush or I look at David Pakman and I don't see a particular model of masculinity that appeals to me. But also, you're on the side of the largest child mutilation operation in the in modern history. We're not even talking about antiquity. And so it's just like, well, if I'm a young man and I happen to be like young, straight, white, and male, my alternative on the left is some kind of suicide, or I can be with these guys that kind of want me to live, or I can kind of just shut out. And to me, it's as clear as day.
The left woke progressives, they blew their load in 2016 to 2020 with the young males. They had the males go up and they indoctrinated the males, and then the males go through a series of violent protests between 2016 and 2020. They got their jollies off. Maybe they had a couple of girlfriends, some polyamorous relationships or something like that. And what the people younger than them are going to see is that, wait, you guys did that and now this is what you get? Like, this is... What do you have now for doing that? The people who went through that are like, a few of them benefited. Most of them are like, this is not stable. I can't live my life throwing rocks through a federal building in Portland. I mean, it's not cool anymore. And plus, I kind of want something more for my life. And I think that the young male energy, it capped out in those fuck Trump, pardon my language, those screw Trump protests in 2016, and then the BLM and the Antifa protests. And anybody younger than that is going to see what happened to those people, like psychologically, what happened to those people. And any of their thought leaders, so-called, you have the passive, the David Pakmans, the intellectuals, and then you have the really angry, ranty, porn huffing Vaushes, and then Destiny, whatever he is. Like, who can replicate what Destiny does? He's brilliant for what he does, but I don't think anybody has the nervous system to replicate that. So you can't like follow in Destiny's shoes. I mean, sure, you can have any old guy come into your house and bang your wife, but there's some, whatever content he had, it's not replicable. And he doesn't, you could find like you could look up the Ben Shapiro, just for sake of argument. You could look up for Ben Shapiro. He's like, well, I can't be an influencer, but I can model him and go into law or go into business management, right? Like Ben Shapiro, he's a template for a certain guy where you can get ahead and live a good life. An online influencer can only really be an online influencer, speaking as one, right? Yeah. You can only really, like, what are you to aspire to? So I don't see anything that the left, the progressive left, has for 20-year-olds. other than degeneracy and something that's already stale. It's not, it'll come back in fashion as some sort of ironic fashion thing, maybe in 10 years.
Like irony cells, Chapo, yeah.
Yeah, but right now they have nothing. So what does the right have to offer? The right has, the right now has several different vectors. You can get down to work and you can make friends a la OGC, like the old Glory Club, the guys that you can do. You can make networks and everybody's going to have...
You can post racism online.
And well, and then you can like have you could like just post racism online because you don't have enough friends or you're particularly gifted at that. And as long as you have an anonymous account...
Oh, like, there's some masterful... They take racism to an art form, some of them.
That is an art form, but you can do that privately and then still live a life, where you're using that just to let off some steam. The Trump phenomena, the Elon phenomena, they're all laying groundwork. Like you can get ahead in this life, whether you're running roofing tile business and you're a Latino or you're some white guy that just wants to make tons of money on Wall Street, like whatever, as long as you're getting ahead, we can all do this. We can all work together to do this, to be mutually beneficial. And I think that a lot of the racism stuff that the left is fearful of actually becomes a kind of bonding experience like it used to be in 90s comedy. Like we were all kind of racist to each other because that was a way to decrease the tensions and increase the brotherly bond of things. And so that doesn't become so front and center. Everything that the people are concerned about radical right doesn't really matter when the reality of the situation on the ground improves for everybody. All that radicalism will be only found in the troon corner of the internet. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
The women who are huffed up on testosterone and the men who are huffed up on estrogen, that's your radical contingent, and they only fit within the left framework. I don't see any other pathway for young men. And so I see that as a shiny possibility for some really interesting ideas to come out, but a lot of the radicalism is going to submit itself to actually prosperity doctrine kind of stuff. And I hope that some sincerity of religious experience is gifted to the young generation. I really do hope that people's hearts are open to the transcendent in a way that allows them to humble a lot of the egoic and hedonic things that are driving people crazy in this generation.
Well, I think that, sorry, I'm just...
No, that's okay. I ranted and now you guys are looking at the chat. Then that's fine.
No, because Nuke Left posted something. I'm just warning him. But no, I think there was a possibility. Very scary, though. I don't want to give these people ideas. But particularly like the Antifa sector of these mass riots, doxing far-right Wignats, clashing with, Eric Stryker and all those guys at Seville. That I think could have been something, because if you look at the New Left, if you look at 68, riots in 68, whether in Europe or North America, and you look at those hippie communes and the dynamics, very predatory dynamics, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have like psychos that were essentially running ex-cults, preying upon young, impressionable hippie women. That was like a weird form of masculinity that was there in the October Revolution in Russia. And I think they're going to hate me for saying this, but they hate us anyways. The only thing I could really see a possibility for the contemporary left, what I like to call transnational progressivism, would be something like a weird form of tankyism or MAGA communism a la Jackson, Hinkle, and Hawes. That's the closest the left can get to a masculine, forward revolutionary form of leftism that I can really think of. You know what I mean? So I don't really know what they could do, because all of the progressive stack, a lot of like really who they're appealing to is so repellent to that idea that a lot of people were saying that Kamala lost because she wasn't radical enough. She didn't appeal to her identity enough. And so I don't know if that's true, though.
I don't think
I mean,
Kamala.
maybe in terms of
I don't think that
getting them voting, but
was she real? I guess I just saw a video today where she was loving on her crew that looked like she was actually being real. That's the only real thing I've ever seen from her. So for whatever reason, she didn't decide to bring that out. But I don't think it scales. There was nothing there. I don't think it was a great mystery. She's going to be so forgotten. You're going to be shocked by how forgotten she's going to be.
Yeah, like Biden the past few months. Except for now. Like, I've only heard about Biden the last few weeks. So, anyways.
Well, and I mean, again, it is a complete whiplash to see the man that had lost his
marbles?
Nomination for president, and and also he's non-compos mentis for, in his mind. But I mean, also that too. And so the debate stage, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Joe. That kind of mumbling sunset kind of syndrome guy. Whereas now. He's all joyful and cheery. It almost, and I'm not one to, it almost not to be too conspiratorial, but it almost feels like, I can throw my middle finger up and enjoy it because it's like this crazy lady's not in charge, thank God. And, so there's that, that's the real joy, right? That we've talked about with all these
What
campaigns.
happens to Obama is going to be really interesting. I think Obama was the last masculine, like ascendant masculine leftist on the American stage, right? Like the aspirational. Like you could aspire to be an Obama, but whatever's happening to him is going to be really interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. But I think, go ahead, Prue. Go ahead.
Well, I mean. Although it's funny that we say like this ascendant leftist masculinity, and then you read about like Obama's past, where he was like reading Foucault and trying to be this academic that tries to get into women's pants. It's like, yeah, it's true. That is sort of the ultimate embodiment of ascendant leftist masculinity.
He had a girlfriend.
Yeah, the male feminist.
He's got that predatory male feminist attitude about him, and with but I mean, on top of that, I don't know where your kind of hot leftism is going to be. I really do think that the fight is going to actually emerge. As it has been in this election in a lot of evangelical circles. I think that your ascendant left-wing masculine alternative is going to be from some kind of liberal progressive Christianity, but it's not going to be the secular humanism. It's going to be, I go to this Presbyterian church, I'm a huge leftist, this is what I believe in. And it's going to be a fight over doctrine. It's going to be a fight over masculinity. And it's going to be a fight over, what's left of American Christianity. And that's what's going to play out. I really do think that's the case. There was a gentleman who was running for Congress in Texas who was very much running on this. And he didn't look like a complete, mutant, like an Antifa mugshot. He looked pretty well put together for all intents and purposes. I think that's going to come and be a huge battle because... as we saw in every election, and Stephen Wolfe is right about this, like white American evangelical Christians have been constantly voting against most left-wing things, and most American, Christians who are on the right are going to have this innate autoimmune response to progressivism. This is why in 2017, when the Pew Research Center did this study on religion, this is why, white American evangelicals were more anti-gay marriage than American Muslims who immigrated to this country. It just tells you where the antibodies are in this instance. And I do think that kind of fight for authentic lefty masculinity is going to definitely come out of, but also it's just going to come out of places where we least expect it. Like there's so many of these attempts to be like the swoletariat, we're like these gym bros that are like, we read Marxist theory, but we also go to the gym and lift. You have these socialist gun clubs and stuff like that.
I actually think it's going to be a classical liberal. Like that's the going to be the left, like the reconstituted Colin Wright, Coleman Hughes, the guys who are going to be back into the establishment because the establishment is going to
like
stop.
Destiny, like unironic neoliberalism, like that one Eastern European guy on Twitter that always goes after Martin. It'll be like there is a sector.
Oh,
of, like,
the Drew guy, the Australian.
There's Slazik and there's that other guy. And there's that Australian guy too. But like there's a sector of like unironic neoliberals that are like Swam Marcus. There you go. Like people like that where they're like,
I can't wait for him to unprivate his account.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
But anyways, did I cut you off, Benjamin?
No.
I think Ben has a very good point, Gio. Sorry to interrupt. I think that
go ahead.
I think he's absolutely right, because as someone who has now kind of entered the fray with sort of some of this drama that I don't really want to participate in because I don't talk about it. But like, I was on Orange Show a couple of weeks ago to talk about the whole James Lindsay stuff and the back and forth. Not my business, not my fight, but I think that that's a pretty strong thorough line, because if I'm James and I have a record of being sort of a new atheist, and his earliest books are about that, and I'd imagine I'm in a pretty awkward spot if I'm in these TP USA pastor conferences talking about like neo-Gnostic Marxism or whatever, and to then see a whole other faction of guys like myself or Oren or whoever kind of emerge. Yeah, that's going to be a battle line, and I think that the quicker that line gets drawn and he calls himself a man of the left and stops associating with like TPUSA, the better. But that fight's going to be there, and I think that's already been here for a while, because you've had moderate people of the left me, that I would consider myself more of a free speech, classical liberal guy. I mean, Joe Rogan, for all intents and purposes, is that. And those lines will be there, and it'll be there, and it'll be in the churches, and then it's going to be just with your average, ordinary people. And it's going to be very weird when this ecosystem, to a large extent it already has due to this election cycle, broaches the mainstream. And it's like, how many people can adequately defend their ideas without trying to explain, 20 plus years of lore of ideas and blogs? That'll be an interesting thing to see.
Well, the thing is, like, there was an attempt by, in terms of geopolitics, in terms of reviving the spirit of liberal democracy, there was this, like, absolutely insane series of articles and tweets by people like Ed Lutwak, who said that, like, well, Ukraine is a good thing because, like, young men can test their armor. And Richard Spencer believes in this, by the way, that, like, young men can test their armor by going to Ukraine and fighting Russia. But it turns out that, like, a lot of leftists, that, like, the Reddit battalions that did actually go and volunteer in the Foreign Battalion, they weren't uncomfortable with a lot of the far-right ideas that the Ukrainians believe in the military, and B, they don't want to get domed by Russian artillery. So it's like, I understand the spirit of, like, trying to revive a sort of heroic form of liberalism by fighting what is perceived in the media as, like, this foreign dictatorial Asiatic fascistic power, but in practice it doesn't really work, because you can't expect, like, people that were, like, throwing bricks at the police in Portland to then go with a Kalashnikov on the battlefield with only 3 weeks of training, and they're in there with, like, guys that have spinny wheel tattoos, and they're, like, getting set to the front line. It's like, it's not going to work, right?
I need to apologize. I forgot about a paragon of leftist masculinity, Will Stancil. He could be. There you go. He could be the path to capture that masculine energy.
Yeah. He could.
He doesn't block anybody.
No, he really doesn't. And I'll give Will a lot of credit. Well, I mean, he's blocked a few people, but I mean, I'll give him a lot of credit to run for office, fail, and to become sort of a lolcow to a lot of respect, but to still be like, you're kind of like this clinging on, diehard believer, go down with the ship, fists pumping and swinging. There's a lot to appreciate about that as a character, as a character trait. So I mean, there's that, but also, I think that you mentioned Ben earlier about Ben Shapiro. I mean, like the whole, there's a pathway to be like a lawyer or like middle management and to do well for yourself. And I think that perhaps to some extent you could say Will is a dyed-in-the-wool activist believer, and I think he's some sort of policy wonk. And I mean, there's a lot of people who work in that area. I mean, Curtis Yarvin calls that like the professional progressive, working in the NGO activist space.
They were very big under the Obama years. Very big.
Well, I mean, they're still big now.
We have to kill that industry. We have to kill that industry.
Yes. And I will hopefully help kill it, but at the same time, I'm part of it. That's a weird in between. I'm a professional progressive by trade.
You're qualified. Seppuku. Kamikaze.
But I'm not going to do that on air. Not for this stream, because I'll be dead, but Gio will still kill me because the show will get demonetized. But I think, yeah, go ahead, Prude. Finish.
But
I think that there is something to say, because I mean, like, there is a very classic American progressive stereotype about being the man that rallies for good. Like, I think that Clarence Darrow is awful as a human being and on his historical track record, but a lot of people consider Clarence Darrow the reason why they became a lawyer, or why like they consider themselves a progressive activist. There is a pantheon of leftist heroes. I mean, I might see them as a list of enemies, but the point being is that there's something there, you know, Sora Bamari, right? Like, and so all these people are out there that they have this list, and I mean that'll have to emerge, but that's a post-mortem that they're going to have to deal with. And right now, I think that they can't, you know, I think that they're upset because Harris had to distance herself from all this crazy woke bullshit that had more or less, you know, that she couldn't escape from, because her entire record when she was running for president in 2020, being the VP, being a senator, being the, you know, attorney general or the district attorney or whatever, all of her career has been dyed in the wool, what we would call woke progressivism for 20 plus years. You can't escape that. But at the same time, there's a lot of die-hard in the wool, you know, left-leaning activists online that are like, well, you know, she cocked, she moved to the center. Why didn't she just stand bold in her ideas? And it's because those ideas are fundamentally unpopular. Nightmare Vision said this earlier today, and I thought this was a great take. And he had said they are conceptually imprisoned. You know, they can't, until they're willing to escape their frame, that perhaps what I'm advocating for isn't realistic to get there, then yeah. And I have these arguments all the time with a lot more of my professional right-leaning friends. Like, I've had back and forths with Jeremy Carl, who is a man I greatly respect and a man whose work I quite enjoy and I appreciate. And I like talking to him, but he and I disagreed privately not too long ago, just a few days ago, on a certain issue. And, you know, we hashed it out, and he was explaining to me, he's just like, we got to, you know, it's the whole, do you want the bill to pass that doesn't get everything that you want, or do you want to win the argument and not get anything? And I think that until the left is willing to play that game with any degree of sincerity, they're going to have this crisis of being trapped within their concepts. Because, again, to quote some other anonymous Twitter poster, you can disagree on economics, you can disagree on market, you know, based healthcare, socialized healthcare. But if you disagree on, you know, black people can do no wrong, trans women are women, and all this other woke nonsense, unless you're willing to obey those like 5, you know, pillars.
The tenets.
That was Jen's, by the way.
Okay, well, Jen, yeah, and I mean, like, thank you for giving credit where it's due. If you disobey any of those, you know, you're a pariah, right? Like, I mean, even I guarantee you that, like, if it weren't for a few issues on probably the criticism of Israel, I'm pretty sure Barry Weiss would still have her job at her old place. You know, I'd imagine that if she didn't disagree on 1 or 2 progressive issues, she'd still be there.
Oh yeah,
and it just goes to show that, like, there's some conceptual rigidity that the left is always going to have a problem with. Whereas I think the right, for as much as we lambast, say, certain forms of diversity, whether it be racial or otherwise, I think there's more ideological diversity on the right than there is the left right now. And that's going to be the big dividing line for how things go. And I think, like you said, Ben, that classical liberal angle that most of the online right's kind of tossed as part of this dustbin of history, that will probably get picked up by the left in a lot of ways.
It's already signs. There's this really rather hideous irony leftist. His name's Gravity Rainbow. I think he fled to Blue Sky recently. But I managed to read one of his Substacks where he was lionizing John Dewey and the sort of like literal classical liberalism or classical progressivism in America, you know, minus all the eugenic stuff that the progressives in the 19th century in America believed in, but sort of like the mass populated I believe the essay, and I'm probably going to review it on the core report. I believe the essay is called Fascist Slop, about like Elon spreading disinformation. And like, actually, you know, John Dewey believed, and all these other progressive liberals believed in like an educated populace and a shining hill on the rock, and that we could deliver like what Habermas would call like communicative rationality. And we need to that's why we need to like destroy Twitter and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Joe Rogan because it's like they're like I mean, and in a lot of ways, a lot of the accounts that were on Elon Musk's favorability list were like slop mongers. They're coal posters, guys like N Wokeness and Cat Turd or Chirachik or whatever. Like it's just they post coal. Let's face it, right? But I think that the framing of the reaction to Donald Trump's presidency, and a lot of people in the online right have been saying this, is more despondency than a call to overt action. The way in 2016, a lot of those Black Lives Matter and Antifa cells were activated as. But who knows down the pipe? It seems to be an internal abnegation that has been the response to what they truly believe is going to be like East Germany. That if you are of a particular gender or persuasion, that you're going to be hunted down by Chuds and that you're going to go to camps. Like they actually believe that you shouldn't tell people your politics because like you never know if a Magatard is going to be listening to you and reporting you to the Stasi. So they believe this stuff. And so if you look at, for example, young women saying that they need to adopt the 4B movement from South Korea, first of all, it's not going to happen the way it does in South Korea as opposed to America, because in South Korea, they had a very specific goal and they had a very specific gender war where all the men are true cells and all the women are femcells, and they've both radicalized themselves. Whereas in America, in North America in general, there just is too many factors in terms of the culture, in terms of media, for it to like really take off. But the point being is that you have people reporting, Benjamin, this is stuff that you talk about in your show, people of a particular orientation that are sunsetting. Whether you can believe those numbers or not is a different story. But, I would imagine, yeah, of course, some of them have been pushed into despondency because of Trump, but whatever, right? And so also you have the framing by who's that woman that created she had this long thread that maybe me and you can review if it's even worth it. I mean, it's terrible. But who's the one that did the 1319 project? What is it called?
Hannah B. Jones, or that's her Twitter anon. She has Ida B. Wells.
Ida B. Wells, yeah.
It's her Twitter, but
yeah. She had this long thread where she goes into how multiracial democracy is a failure because basically it's the same talking point that you even saw in 2016, where white people and white women in particular, they see that their privilege is threatened, and now you have Hispanic people that it's like all these people, like there's this multiracial coalition of anti-blackness, and that only black people really voted for Kamala. Hispanic people voted for Trump, and ergo you have this like the main building block of the progressive coalition in America, which has been black people, that there's like this multiracial anti-blackness, and that's why multicultural democracy is doomed, and that's why we're going to get like Trumpian authoritarianism. And let me just go to the last thing she said. Black Americans will vote like they vote, not because they're aligned with every single Democrat policy, because they understand this country with the clarity that can be challenging for people who have not had to live under apartheid in the U.S. Oh my God, who've never known what it's not like not to be able to cast a ballot, not to have rights of citizenship. Black Americans know American fascism because they lived under it, things that Hispanics don't know. Black people uniquely understand this notion. We see rationalizing by other races, voting against black interests, racism, sexism, xenophobia. Now America stands on the precipice of an authoritarian style of governance never before seen in 248 years. Well, I thought they were going to say it's never before seen in like 80 years, So, or 90 years? How long has it been since World War II proved? 80 years?
Yeah.
Almost, 70 something now?
Yeah, almost 80 years. So
almost 80 years.
Yeah, but I guess she means like slavery, of course. So you have this framing that, and listen, I know from the perspective of the online right, it's terrible coal, but it is kind of like, I'm gonna heat for saying this. But it is kind of enduring to see like Trump appealing to sort of like wholesome Chungus. Like everyone can get involved in being based. Like if you're Mexican.
Yeah, what's the barrier
You know,
entry to serving fries at McDonald's? I mean, that is. He went all the way down to
like the fact that like Hispanics voted against mass immigration, sort of like, you know, you have like my based Hispanic people, my based black guy. It's like I think Trump consciously played to like that form of like we're different, but we can come together to agree on fundamental things, which I mean a lot of people in the on right don't like, but I think like it is funny like seeing, you know, Indians pray for Trump and you know.
I think the enduring unfortunate consequence of the civil rights / affirmative action era has been the production of perhaps the most loathsome version of black females. The overproduction of them, and then the installing of a certain black female into a position of power. And it's just gonna work to just, I think it's such an unfortunate thing for black women that this system has promoted these hot-headed, self-centered, narcissistic blowhards as the paradigm of what what black supremacy is. That's something that the Democrats have gone all the way in. And Kamala kind of was kind of put the brakes on it. She wasn't totally overbearing in the same way that Joy Reid or the Hannah Jones is, but it's a trope that we see over and over and over again. If you watch movies like the last 5 years since the 2020, they've just overproduced this kind of version of the disempowered, empowered black woman specifically. And it's so terrible. It's like that's your version of the feminine and of blackness, if that is a concept at all. But I think aesthetically it is a concept. But instead of Aretha Franklin, or these black artists, we have these academic fat asses who don't do anything but deride everybody and say that they have secret knowledge that nobody else can gain.
Yeah, the dismantler.
The dismantler phenotype.
Yeah.
No, and there has been a great, and I mean, Nicholas Saldo, and sorry, Gio, but I mean, his four horsemen of like the online apocalypse or whatever for politics, fake, gay, cringe, retarded, like those four things. And I mean, like, if you could not be any more saccharine other than just pure spite, pure racial hatred and animus, that says everything that we're doing is out to get you. We're getting what's ours. There's nothing you can do about it. And we don't care if anyone speaks out against us on our side. We're in charge. And the whole, excuse me, I'm speaking thing. Like, if you wanted to embody every bad stereotype of like, excuse me, miss, I understand that you're having a conversation, but this is a movie theater type person. This was like the last 10 years of lefty politics. And the last 4 years especially. And that's there. And it's not, I mean, if it goes away, that would be awesome. I'm not holding my breath because that is pretty entrenched. There's a lot of money going into it, but we'll see. I mean, I'm not holding my breath because I think
it's got a shelf life. I think White Boy Summer. I think Lomez has been going on this propaganda spree of promoting young, attractive people promoting Trump. He's just really leaning into the positive vibes of that.
And that's good. And that goes. And again, if it's an election about vibes, and I hope that that's the case. My chief concern is not that it doesn't have a shelf life. It's that a lot of what allowed that to rise
even worse.
It's legally entrenched.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, you're right. The cool, sexy people are all for Trump. We're all for building stuff. It's almost as if we're trying to bring back yuppies, which I'm all for. Don't get me wrong. Like if we're going to bring back
shirt nationalism,
polo shirt nationalism, like all this ice cream nationalism, like green polo nationalism, like country, whatever. I'm all for it.
Porkies,
like whatever brings back the Ralph Lauren stuff that's been posting. Bring that shit back. That is so great. I hope that happens. I have a bunch of Ralph Lauren, like American flag sweaters. I'm going to go wear one for the next stream. But again, the problem is like, that's cool. But legally speaking, the DEI stuff, the anti-white stuff, it's all still entrenched in law. And that's my concern. Like, unless that goes away, like, vibes are still vibes. But the reason why men and a lot of white women too, like, one reason why they all went this direction is because, you know, for all this talk about systemic racism, it's all systemically against the people that voted for Trump to begin with.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done. I feel a lot of optimism. I feel a lot of relief. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think there's the will to do that work. And I think that at this sharp opportunity, like, bridge building and optimism is just leaning into that Trumpian, that aspect of Trumpianism. Whoever, like package your ideals and your plan to somebody who could work at a fry station and who could work at a rocket station, right? Like whatever idea can tie the rocket scientist to the fry cook, like, that's Trumpian. That's Trumpian. That's the Trump America. So whatever ideas can sit within that, those are the ones to run with.